Hello and welcome to the second video of the Absolute Beginner series in Power BI. Today we're going to create some data and then we'll talk about the fact and the dim tables. We'll be taking one concept at a time. So let's get started by creating some dummy data. And this is not the standard way of creating the data in Power BI. Normally we import the data, but to keep the demo simple and understandable, I'm creating it on the fly in front of you. It's basic data for some hospitals. We have 3 hospitals. We have some arrival date and discharge dates. So let's get started with this table. We have the table in there and we have some fields in there. You can see that some of the fields have the sigma or the summation sign in front of that. So let's see what that means. So you can check the field types, etc. For example, we can change the date format, the way the date is going to be displayed, to a small date. So I'll do it for both admit and discharge dates. You notice that some discharge dates are missing because the patients are still in the hospital. And you notice that patient age has a sigma sign in front of that. If you're not happy with that, you can remove it by saying don't summarize. You can either remove the summation or the summarization, or you could set it to a default. For example, let's say charges. If we want it to be removed, we can simply say don't summarize and the sigma sign disappears. But what if we wanted to use the patient ID and we wanted to summarize it on the count, so that every time we have a chart and we just drag the patient ID, it'll simply count the number of patients for us, which is a good thing. This is what we want to use in our charts. So we will live with that. And remember, today we're going to talk about the fact tables and the dim tables. I'll come to that in a minute. So let's create some basic charts. I'm going to drag the hospital name and then I can drag the patient ID. You notice that's automatically showing the count of patient ID because we set the default as count. So, which is a good thing. I'll just switch on the data label so that you can see the values. So we have a chart there. I'm going to create another chart very quickly. This time we can pick something different. For example, hospital name. And then what about the charges? So remember the charges, we set average as the default. So it's automatically averaging it out. So it's showing the mean or the average charges per hospital. So lastly, I'll create another chart very quickly. Just copy the original chart and make a copy of that. And then maybe drag the hospital type in the legend so that you can see different colors. So you can see now it's government and private being highlighted differently. You can obviously go and change the colors. So the idea is that we don't have any problems in creating the chart from the single table. So our topic was talking about the fact tables and the dim tables. So let's turn our attention towards that. So if you look at the data, we can see that the hospital names are being repeated and also the hospital type being repeated. If we had 1 million records in our table, we would actually be repeating the hospital names and the hospital types again and again 1 million times. So those of you who have come from database background, you already know about normalization. So this is what normalization is about. So instead of repeating the data in the same table, you normalize it so that you have the transactions in one table, which is the fact table in this case, and then the lookup values or the dimensions are in another table, which is the dimensions table. So fact is basically the transactions and the dim or the dimension tables. So in this example, we have created a dimensions table which had the hospital name and the hospital type. There could have been more information about the hospital longitude, latitude, etc. also in this dimensions table so that we don't repeat it 1 million times in our fact table. So earlier we created just one table and we created our charts from this. Now we have 2 tables, one fact table, one dim table. So we have the list of the hospitals in one table and the actual transactions in the other table. We still have the hospital A, B, C, etc. and both of them, and the name is the same. So hospital name appears in both the tables. So Power BI has already found the relationship and linked it. So on one side, on the left-hand side, we have the fact patients table. On the right-hand side, we have the hospital list table. So the relationship is many to one. In fact patients, we have many patients going to the same hospital, but on the right-hand side, which is the lookup table, we only have the hospital A appearing as once. So this is many to one relationship. Now the question is, what we did, was it the best thing to do? We had the hospital names as the big text, hospital A, hospital B, hospital C, etc. But the best thing would be to actually make it numeric. So in this case, you can see that I've created another column called hospital ID, which will be more useful, and it's much faster when you have the long data. In this example, you might not be able to see and appreciate the speed, but when you have a lot of data, a lot of relationships, it's much better to have a numerical value, because it's faster for the system to look at the numerical values and pick up the corresponding information from the fact tables. So I'm using a hospital ID as a numeric value, and then given the hospital name and the hospital type, etc. separately. So now with both the tables created, we have only one difference. We used a numeric key for the lookup value for the hospital names. So hospital ID is there in both the tables now, the fact table as well as in the dim table. And if you look at the relationship, that has automatically been established because we use the same name, hospital ID, in both the tables. So it picked it up automatically. So now we are ready to create some charts. Now there's a fundamental difference in how we create the charts. So rule of thumb is, when you have the lookup values or the X values, it should come from your dim tables, and your transactions or the count, etc., should come from your fact table. So that's the basic idea. So another example, we'll pick the hospital name from the dim table, and then I'm going to pick something, for example, the patient ID with the count of the patient ID, and then I'm going to put the outcome in the legend so that we have the data which is splitted by the outcome, for example, died versus survived, etc. So in each hospital we can see how many patients died and how many patients survived. In the third example, we can do the age of the patient, and we can change the default aggregation to average so that we can get the age in the private hospitals as well as in the government hospitals. So dim table provided us the hospital type information, and then we picked up the age, patient age, from the fact table. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one, and we will talk about how we can get those hospitals which had 0 counts.